am D. Turnbow, and I am the author of the book False, Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, third generation. I was born in nearly 60 years ago, and I was excommunicated nearly 32 years ago. I loved my old religion. It made me, and once when it broke me, it made me again. But a religion that exercises such control over its members' lives, usurps the places of God in conscience, and deems itself to be more potent and present than both, the meaning of a cult. When you leave a religion, it's done, but when you leave a cult, you're shunned. This is a poet state where we too believe the society. Cover Up. Part 2, Chapter 1, revised from the book False, Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions, by D. Turnbow. We get this from the 1987 Watchtower Journal, and I quote, "The Watchtower and Awake, and every page, including the artwork, is scrutinized by selected members of the governing body before it is printed." End quote. Now, from the 2004 Watchtower Journal, we get this, and I quote, "Do you enjoy solving a mystery? To do so, you look for clues that help you work your way toward the solution." End quote. Finally, from the book Revelation, its grand climax at hand, the Watchtower Society states, and I quote, "Why are Christendom's first 400 years of history important? For the same reason that the first few years of a child's life are important, because they are the formative years when the foundation is laid for the future personality of the individual. What do Christendom's early centuries reveal?" End quote. At the demand of the Watchtower Society, if we are to measure Christendom by its formative years, then the Watchtower Society is demanding the same of itself. So why are the Watchtower Society's first few decades important, and what do the beginning years of the society reveal? They are the formative years when the foundation was laid for the future personality of the Watchtower Society. On the cover of Charles Taze Russell's 1891's foremost journal, Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence, was displayed a symbol of the Knights Templar cross and crown symbol. On the later journals, a 4-spiked crown with a cross symbol replaced the earliest 5-spiked crown with a cross symbol, and to the far right of this symbol was the helmet armor, baculus, sword, axe and shield symbol. On the cover of the successor and current journal, The Watchtower, announcing Jehovah's Kingdom, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society has seemingly done away with all such occult trappings, and instead displays on its main journal what simply appears to be a watchtower for the namesake journal, but the symbol of the watchtower doubles as a crown, as the watchtower is the crown of a fortress or rampart. We find this in the book Morals and Dogma, which was compiled for the former Grand Commander of North American Freemasonry, Albert Pike, and I quote, "The symbols and ceremonies of Masonry have more than one meaning. They rather conceal than disclose the truth. They hint it only." End quote. Look at the crown symbol on the current Watchtower Journal. Notice that the T below the crown is the only letter of 3 letters that is fully within the perimeter of the 2 vertical bars of the crown diagram. This is to distinguish the T, so, with the crown, this is the Knights Templar cross and crown symbol, hidden in plain view. Now, before expanding on this symbol, let me reveal the Masonic compass and square, the single most universally recognizable symbol of Freemasonry, which is also hidden in plain view, on the cover of the current Watchtower Journal. The W in the word Watchtower, that looks like overlapping 2 V's, are not 2 V's, and there is no question about it. By leaving the 2 joined, and rotating only the opposite end of one of the symbols up 90 degrees, reveals that Masonic compass and square symbol. On the inside of the cover page of the Watchtower Journal is stated, and I quote, "This magazine, The Watchtower, honors Jehovah God, the ruler of the universe." End quote. The expression, "the ruler of the universe," is coded Masonic language, and is reminiscent of the expression, "great architect of the universe," used by Charles Taze Russell for deity. In the book, Thy Kingdom Come, regarding the measurements of the Pyramid of Egypt, Russell expressed, and I quote, "If it be a record of the secret plans of the great architect of the universe, displaying his foreknowledge and wisdom, it should and will be in full accord with his written word." End quote. Now from the book, An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and Its Kindred Sciences, by Freemason Albert Mackey, he explained, and I quote, "Great architect of the universe, the title applied in the technical language of Freemasonry to the deity." End quote. Now, to the Masonic cross and crown symbols. Where Russell's cross and crown symbol is decorated with a surrounding laurel wreath, the current Watchtower Society's cross and crown symbol has no such motif, where the Knights Templar cross and crown symbol has the Latin motto, "In Nato Scio Vin Cis," surrounding it. When translated into English, the Latin motto reads, "By this sign thou shalt conquer." From the Masonic Dictionary, we get this regarding the Latin motto, "In Nato Scio Vin Cis," and I quote, "On the grand standard of the commentary of Knights Templar, these words are inscribed over a blood-red passion cross, and they constitute in part the motto of the American branch of the order. By this sign thou shalt conquer." End quote. Now as regards the laurel wreath, or laurel crown, to quote Albert Mackey, "A decoration used in some of the higher degrees of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite. The laurel is an emblem of victory, or crown of victory. The laurel crown in Freemasonry is given to him who has made a conquest over his passions." End quote. By no accident, the number of letters of this English translation is the same number of leaves on Russell's laurel wreath. Now, where both Russell's crown and the actual Knights Templar's crown have 5 spikes, the 5 spikes of the current Watchtower Society's crown have all been lopped off, and unlike the actual Knights Templar's crown and Russell's crown, the current Watchtower's crown is missing its bottom horizontal line. That the 5 spikes on the current crown were lopped off has to do with ceremonial magic, where these spikes, which has symbols, are triangles that make up the apex, or the 4 sides of the pyramid, which itself can be converted to the form of a truncated pyramid by having its apex cut off. Consider this from the book, The Magician's Companion, a practical and encyclopedic guide to magical and religious symbols. Author Bill Whitcomb writes, and I quote, "It is important to note that each square of the tablet of union and of the 4 watchtowers of the elements may be converted to the form of a truncated pyramid." End quote. I explain this in details in my book False, Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions. Now this from Wikipedia, I quote, "In the tradition of the 1880s Order of the Golden Dawn, a watchtower or guardian and ceremonial and derived neo-pagan magical tradition is a tutelary spirit of one of the 4 cardinal points or quarters, north, east, south, and west. They are also variously associated in many traditions with each of the 4 classical elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and stars. The watchtowers are invoked during the ritual of casting the magic circle." End quote. 4 of the 5 spikes lop off from the current watchtower crown, each being the shape of a triangle, form the 4-sided pyramid, with the 5th triangle as a star, mentioned in the above quotation. The mention of Golden Dawn in the above quote is what the earlier Watchtower Society referenced when it named its journal, Golden Age, now titled Awake, the companion to the Watchtower periodical. Consider again the words from the above quote where it says, "The watchtowers are invoked during the ritual of casting the magic circle." The journal Awake magazine, with its exclamation mark, which mark is used to indicate forceful utterance, together symbolize speaking, to invoke the angels of the watchtowers, This is the magical invocation of the watchtower. The casting of magical circle or circles is simply the sum of the angles of the 4 triangles, each being 180 degrees, or 2 circles. From the Hermetic Library, at hermetic.com, regarding this invocation, called Opening by a Watchtower, we find occultist and ceremonial magician Israel Regardie ceremonial magic, and I quote, "In the names and letters of the Great Northern Quadrangle, I invoke ye angels of the Watchtower of the North," end quote. This opening by a watchtower, or awakening the abodes, is repeated for the angels of the watchtowers of the East, South, and West respectively. I detail this in my book False, Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions. To the Jehovah's Witnesses, when you open the watchtowers, are you unknowingly symbolizing invoking angels? Now, why the horizontal bottom line is missing from the current Watchtower Society's crown diagram is that the right and left parallel lines can perform the function of quotation marks and set off and highlight the 3 letters, HEC, that are directly below the crown, but inside the perimeter of the 2 parallel lines, and why the crown is over the 3 letters of the prefix watch and not over 3 of the letters of the suffix tower, is that the 3 letters, HEC, just so happens to be the initials for the words and, cross, crown. While the letters A and C need no explanations, as 2 of the 3 initials, the letter T must be explained. Just as the distinct and historical Tau cross is T-shaped and is unavoidably seen as a T, the T below the watchtower's crown symbol is to be seen as a cross. Then the T is C, for cross. The A is for and, where the C is for crown, hence, cross and crown. Notice that all of the letter T, not quite half of the letter C, and very little of the letter E, are the only 3 letters that are inside of the boundaries of the parallel lines of the crown. Notice now how the foot of the letter T is seemingly intruding on the space of the foot of the letter A. This is to say that, like the actual Knights Templar cross and crown symbol, only the foot of the cross occupies the space to the left, below the crown, where its crossbar occupies the space to the right, atop the crown, and the stem occupies the space on a diagonal inside the crown. We can deduce that the cross is to be understood as being on a diagonal because of the subtle slanting ears on the crossbar of the T font, again, the T being a crown. On page 200 of the book, Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimers of God's Kingdom, the Watchtower Society offered this for the early use of the cross and crown symbol, and I quote, "Bible students wore a cross and a crown as a badge of identification, and the symbol was on the front cover of the Watchtower from 1891 to 1931. But in 1928 it was emphasized that not the decorative symbol but one's activities as a witness showed he was a Christian. In 1936 it was pointed out that evidence indicates that Christ died on a stake, not a 2-beamed cross." End quote. Throughout the entire 750-page of the Proclaimer's book, the Watchtower Society has only these meager and equivocal lines to offer regarding the Bible students' use of the cross and crown. But the Society's last sentence is naggingly suspicious, and its second sentence says nothing to satisfy its first sentence. Without carefully reading the Watchtower Society's aforementioned words, one might gather that the mention of badge of identification means Christian. However, the crafty Watchtower Society was secretly identifying the Bible students as Knights Templars. By placing Bible students and Christian in separate sentences, the Watchtower Society was careful not to associate the two. The Society further makes this distinction by the conjunction word, but, which transitions the discussion of Bible students away from that of Christian. Next, the anti-Christian Watchtower Society misleads its inveterate Christian followers by using a bogus date, 1928, with a fictitious person, witness. Beyond the timeline being amiss, in 1928, or before 1928, The people of the congregations were not called witness, meaning Jehovah's Witness. But for the sake of argument, if in 1928 it was emphasized that not the decorative symbol, but rather one's activity as a witness showed him to be a Christian, then did the Bible students' inactivity, that is, to leave the cross and crown symbol on the cover of its foremost journal, years after 1928, showed them to be Knights Templars? Finally, on the Society's last sentence, 2 points. First, the 1936 date had nothing to do with the Templar symbol being removed from the Watchtower Journal in 1931, because how can one knowingly practice a thing today that is only bestowed upon him years later? Second, regarding the Society's mention of the stake in the same vein with the two-beamed cross, in regard to Christ, struck me as being irrelevant, so I held it up to closer inspection. As it turns out, the Watchtower Society's stake remark rather hints at the death of Jacques de Molay, the 23rd and last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, who was burned at the stake in 1314. Now the Society's mention of the two-beamed cross is to say, the patriarchal cross of the Knights Templar. In the book, An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Albert Mackey explained the patriarchal cross this way, and I quote, "It is the insignia of the officers of the Grand Encampment of Knights Templar of the United States." End quote. So, what about the helmet, armor, baculus, sword, axe and shield symbol? Let's consider again the book, An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its Kindred Sciences, and I quote, "Baculus, the staff of office borne by the Grand Master of the Templar. In ecclesiology, baculus is the name given to the pastoral staff carried by a bishop or an abbot as the ensign of his dignity and authority. Baculus means a long stick or staff, which was commonly carried by travelers. The staff was carried by persons in authority, as a mark of distinction." End quote. The symbol of the baculus, with the helmet, armor, sword, axe and shield, was displayed on the cover of the Watchtower Journal to celebrate, honor and distinguish Russell as initiate, traveling Mason, and pastor of the Lodge of Zion's Watchtower. So while many are hoping to discover Russell's name on the list of some outside lodge, his name is all over Zion's Watchtower. So why the current Watchtower Society does not display, even by disguise, the helmet, armor, baculus, sword, axe and shield symbol on its current journal of the Watchtower, because this symbol belongs to Russell alone as pastor. From the book, Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimers of God's Kingdom, we get this, and I quote, "Today, Christian elders among Jehovah's Witnesses are not elected by local congregations but are appointed by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Care is also exercised not to use expressions such as pastor or elder as titles." End quote. What are wrong with the above quote is 1. The Jehovah's Witnesses do refer to the men who head the congregations as elders. But foremost, the Watchtower Society started out referring to these men by the expression elders. Throughout the Watchtower history, the title of pastor, as far as I can find, is the exclusive property of Russell. Though called pastor, it would be as naive to refer to Charles Taze Russell as the founder of the Zion's Watchtower, as it is a misnomer to refer to Russell as a Christian restorationist. First, the late 19th century Masonic Order of Zion's Watchtower was merely a branch of the centuries-old order of Freemasonry. Second, Russell was an apostate to Christianity to the day he died. And so what that Charles Taze Russell was at the forefront of Zion's Watchtower, he wasn't even its first president. As it is with any militant order that enlists the young, Freemasonry enlisted an 18-year-old, Charles Taze Russell, to be on the forefront as a traveling Freemason. Now regarding traveling Freemasons, the book, An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Freemason, Albert Mackey, explained, and I quote, There is no portion of the history of the order so interesting to the Masonic scholar as that which is embraced by the Middle Ages of Christendom, beginning with about the 10th century, when the whole of civilized Europe was perambulated by those associations of workmen, who passed from country to country and from city to city under the name of traveling Freemasons, for the purpose of erecting religious edifices. And it is to this association of operative artists that, by gradual changes into a speculative system, we are to trace the Freemasons of the current day. End quote. Let's trace these so-called operative artists to the speculative ones today. From the book, Where Else But Pittsburgh, written in 1958 by George Swetnam de Monde, and I quote, "It is an amazing thing that no Pittsburgh history has ever even so much as contained the name of Charles Taze Russell, since his influence has easily been the widest of any man who ever lived in the city, not even excepting Andrew Carnegie. For years Pastor Russell traveled constantly, covering more than 1,000,000 miles, delivering more than 30,000 sermons in lectures and talks, writing books totaling over 50,000 pages, which have reached a circulation of more than 20 million copies." End quote. From the Wikipedia, where it cites Andrew Holden's book, where in his book, Mr. Holden thanks the Watchtower Society for granting him permission to quote from its text, and I quote, "By the 1910s, Russell's organization maintained nearly 100 pilgrims, or traveling preachers. Russell engaged in significant global publishing efforts during his ministry, and by 1912, he was the most distributed Christian author in the United States." End quote. From its book, Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimers of God's Kingdom, the Watchtower Society explained, and I quote, "Brother Rutherford was inclined not to change the direction of the organization, but to continue in the forward-moving pattern established by Russell. Traveling representatives of the society, known as pilgrims, were increased from 69 to 93. The pastoral work, which had been started prior to Russell's death, was now stepped up." End quote. 156 pages later, the Watchtower Society picks up its discussion of pilgrim, but the story changes. I quote, "In 1926, Brother Rutherford began to implement arrangements that changed the work of the pilgrims from that of simply traveling speakers into that of traveling supervisors and promoters of field service done by the congregations." End quote. Pilgrim is the code word for traveler or traveling Mason. Now regarding the word pilgrim, Freemason, Albert Mackey explained in his An Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, and I quote, "From the Latin peregrinus, signifying a traveler." End quote. So why else is the Middle Ages equally so interesting to the Masonic scholar as regards the traveling Masons in Christendom? Let's refresh our memories on the definition of Middle Ages. First, from the website Lexico we get, I quote, "The period of European history from the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, 5th century, to the fall of Constantinople, 1453, or, more narrowly, from about 1000 to 1453. End quote. In 1307, the Catholic Church by surprise and force removed the extra wealthy but aged Knights Templar as the Church's crusader. Immediately after, the Church looted the Templars' wealth, and later murdered its Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. The Templars passed from country to country and from city to city for the purpose of tearing down and supplanting Christendom to avenge the old order and the death of its Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. Now, let's return to the missing bottom horizontal line on the current Watchtower Society crown. The bottom horizontal line on the current crown diagram is called a traverse bar. The dictionary defines traverse as to go or travel across or over. That the traverse bar is missing from the crown is symbolic of Rutherford's arrangements that changed the work of the pilgrims from traveling Masons to supervising Masons. Now the Society's mention of a precise increase of from 69 to 93, was its clandestine way of introducing numerology. The number pair, 69 and 93, have at their center 2 nines, and, by adding the 6 and 3, we get the third 9, or 999. In numerology, 999 is completion, which is the Society's way of showing the Order's completion of the function and duty of the Bible students, as travelers, meaning traveling Masons. Furthermore, the difference between 69 and 93 is 24, or 2 plus 4, 6, with the page number 66, that's 666. If this seems a stretch, the subsequent page that the Society picks up its discussion of Pilgrim is 222, or 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6 plus, page 66, is 666. If more evidence is needed, the actual Watchtower Index reference reads 222-3, which is 222 and 3, or 222 times 3. Now, in the Society's aforementioned quote, by it having placed quotation marks only around the words pastoral work, the Society was setting off this expression, so as not to confuse or even contaminate the legwork done by Charles Taze Russell, as a Freemason, with the stampeding done by the mostly women congregations, as non-Masons, then, and now. Finally, still from the Society's aforementioned quote, stepped up is symbolic and has to do with the steps of Freemasonry, which is for the Watchtower Society to say, 1. That Russell's death finished his earthly duties, he stepped up to heaven, and 2. That the Watchtower Society changed or stepped up its organizational direction, where the remaining Bible student traveling Masons then supervised the congregations in their field service work, to peddle a new and less abrasive Christian heterodoxy, and no longer publicly promote occultism, like pyramidology, or the winged disc, which is disguised on the Proclaimer's book as a line on both sides of the globe, at a top. These lines are actually wings, though not drawn out. In my book, False Jehovah's Witness and Watchtower Religions, I explain this, and show how Russell's Pyramid of Egypt is synonymous to the Watchtower. The Watchtower Society not only conceals its occult doctrines beneath the ruse makeshift heterodoxies of the naive and credulous Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Society also conceals its Masonic identity behind these impersonator Christians. In the words of occultist Eliphas Levi, from his book, Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual, I quote, "In the ceremonies practiced at reception by all secret societies, there are found indications of a doctrine which is everywhere the same and everywhere carefully concealed." End quote. Now, before reviewing some of the current Watchtower Society's secret doctrines, let's consider the 1913 speech by Knights Templar, Charles Taze Russell, The Temple of God, and I quote, "I am very glad to have this particular opportunity of saying a word about some of the things in which we agree with our Masonic friends, because we are speaking in a building dedicated to Masonry and we also are Masons. I am a Freemason. I am a free and accepted Mason. You know our order is so secret we cannot know each other always. Many Masons shake hands with me and give me what I know is their grip. They don't know me from a Mason. Something I do seems to be the same as Masons do, but they often give me all kinds of grips and I give them back. Then I tell them I don't know anything about it except just a few grips that have come to me naturally." End quote. Russell continued, "1,000 years, Earth's glory. Yes, 1,000 years for the blessing of the world through this great temple that God is preparing. 1,000 years during which these Knights Templar are to scatter blessings to all the families of the earth. We may not have our white feathers now, but we will have our white raiment by and by." End quote. Now, to reveal some carefully concealed doctrines of the current Watchtower Secret Society. Look again at the current Watchtower Society's crown symbol. The 4, indenting 90-degree angles, attached to the lower part of the right and left parallel lines of the crown or watchtower, constitute two circles, both for 90 degrees, or 4 times 90 degrees, equal 360 degrees, times both sides, equals 720 degrees, hence two circles. This is the ritual of casting magical circles. Now, from the website, sacredtext.com, we get this, and I quote, "The geometry of Freemasonry, author's lodge transactions. The cable's length has always been understood to be one of 720 feet, which is twice 360, the measure of the circle, making one circle to stand for the spiritual in man, and the other for the material. He believes the length of my cable tow to mean that I will go as far in assisting my brethren as my moral principles and my material condition will permit." End quote. As regards the hidden meaning of the two columns or pillars that the dual circles rest between, D. Istibarat explains, at darrenistibarat.wordpress.com, and I quote, "As with most occult symbols, the Masonic twin pillars conceal multiple layers of meaning, some intended for the profane and others divulged in higher degrees of Freemasonry. However, it is generally accepted that the Jachin and Boaz recurrent the equilibrium between two opposite forces." End quote. And we get this from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, and I quote, "The symbols and ceremonies of Masonry have more than one meaning. They rather conceal than disclose the truth. They hint it only." End quote. Continuing from the book, Morals and Dogma, we get this, and I quote, "The two parallel lines enclosing the circle are connected at the top, as are the columns Jachin and Boaz, symbolizing the equilibrium which explains the great mysteries of nature." End quote. Look at the Society's crown symbol. The mirror indenting 90-degree angles are arranged in the manner of steps. Freemason Albert Mackey explained, and I quote, "The word degree, in its primitive meaning, signifies a step." End quote. There are two sets of steps, 2 steps coming up on one side, and 2 steps going down on the other side, 4 steps in total. The meaning here is the 4 steps. For the 4 words, as above, so below, the said equilibrium of spiritual and the material worlds. Regarding the expression, as above so below, Wikipedia explains, I quote, "As above, so below, is an aphorism associated with sacred geometry, Hermeticism, and the tarot." End quote. Finally, from the website, freemasoninformation.com, John Tolbert and Frederick L. Millikan explained, and I quote, "Medieval Kabbalists held Hermes in great veneration, no wonder, since he is considered, in some legends, as having given the Kabbalah to Moses. The Zohar contains phrases which closely parallel the well-known Hermetic motto, as above so below. Come and see, the world above and the world below are perfectly balanced. Kabbalah and Hermeticism share the all-important mystical understanding of the balanced interrelations of heaven and earth." End quote. They pull the wool over the eyes, the way the wolves would hope to reap, cloaked as shepherds, in their disguise, are butchers, herding the sheep. Don't forget to subscribe to check out my upcoming video on Caleb and Sophia, and thank you for listening.